Myths are not stories that are untrue. Rather, they are tales that don't fit neatly into the historical record, which serve as a foundation to a culture. Long ago, in the land we now call Lesotho, an old woman carefully walks through a wasteland. She steps out from behind a baobab tree and looks over the scorched and desolate earth. It's over. It's all over. The apocalypse has come, and she's the last living thing on the planet. But this extinction event was not caused by war, famine, or disease. Rather, it came from a great monster, the ever-hungry Kammapa. But she is determined not to give in to despair. For though she doesn't know how, and doesn't know when, she knows she'll find a way to bring humanity back, and take revenge on the monster responsible. The day of the apocalypse started like any other. The people tended their herds, gathered water for their families, and told stories around the fire. But suddenly, a great roar pierced the air, and a few moments later, a beast appeared. A massive, shapeless form slowly emerged from the mountains. Shiny and slick, its skin glinted in the morning sun. The incomprehensible body held aloft on bizarre spindly legs. It lacked a head or face, until with a horrifying sound, the creature's great body split, revealing a gaping maw lined with hideous fangs. Its roar filling the villagers with terror. Everyone scattered as it trundled toward the village, but it was too late. Kammapa began to feed. It collapsed on the town, gobbling up dozens of people in every bite and swallowing them whole. Humans, livestock, even the crops, no edible thing survived. And as the beast consumed everything and everyone in its sight, its body began to swell like a balloon. Still, no matter how full it got, Kammapa hungered for more, and continued to devour all things until there was nothing left. And only when it saw the entire village had been consumed did Kammapa lumber back to its cave in the mountains. However, the monster had missed one thing. An old woman named Ramatla had hidden herself in a baobab grove on the outskirts of town. But when she finally emerged, she wept with guilt and fear, for all she had known and loved was gone. She wandered the earth for weeks, but no matter where she went, nothing was left. She was the sole survivor of the human race, and now completely alone. But determined not to give up, she brushed the gray hair from her eyes and sat down to pray to the gods. She begged them not to let this be the end of humanity, and prayed for a blessing from the gods to use whatever life she had left to get revenge. And after a few moments, the gods answered. Ramatla gasped as she felt a sharp pain through her body, her belly expanding, becoming round and pregnant. Miraculously, though she was old and alone, the gods had given her a child. She gave birth mere moments later and named the child Ditaolane. The child then grew, almost as quickly as he had been born. In the hour that it took her to gather leaves to make them a bed, he had grown from an infant to a child. And though she loved her son dearly, at that moment she felt a pang of sadness. At this rate, he would be grown before nightfall. Then he spoke. "Sit and rest, mother," he said, seeing how exhausted she was. And as they both sat, looking up at the night sky, Ditaolane turned to his mother and asked how there could be so many stars while the earth was so empty and barren. Why were they alone? Did they perhaps come from the stars? Would they return there one day? Ramatla's heart was heavy. Though he now looked like a man, she knew her son still had the mind of a child, and that the true story of what happened to humanity would be difficult for him to take in. But he continued to insist on knowing the truth. So reluctantly, she told him about how there'd once been many people and many villages, and about how Kammapa had come down from the mountains and devoured them all. When she finished, she saw her son's eyes filled with tears, and she began to cry too, sorry that he had to know such pain so young. When they laid down to rest for the evening, sleep did not find Ditaolane, for he knew there was nothing stopping Kammapa from one day coming down from the mountain once more and devouring them as well. He had to do something. So, in the middle of the night, he rummaged through his mother's things and found an old rusted cooking knife. But when he held it in his hands, the gods made it sharp and new. And taking this as a sign that he was on the right path, he set off immediately towards Kammapa's mountain. The moon hung high and bright when he finally reached its peak, making his way to the entrance of a great cave. He crept carefully inside, moving without a sound, until at last he found Kammapa sleeping, deep within the mountain. Sneaking close, Ditaolane raised his knife and plunged it down into the monster. But to his horror, the blade simply slipped off of the slick hide, not leaving so much as a mark. Worse still, the fumbled attack awoke Kammapa, and with a deafening roar, the beast lunged forward, opened his massive mouth, and swallowed Ditaolane whole. Then it was all darkness. He couldn't see anything. He felt around with his hands, exploring best he could, until suddenly he heard a voice. "Oh, I hope it swallowed a cow or something. We haven't eaten in ages." Ditaolane was shocked. There were other humans still alive. He called out into the darkness and discovered many more survivors. They told him they'd been there for weeks, living off of the animals and plants Kammapa had swallowed, but recently they'd run out. Now determined more than ever to slay Kammapa and rescue the last of the human race, an idea struck Ditaolane like lightning. He warned everyone to brace themselves, and then plunged his knife into the stomach wall beside him. Kammapa roared and shuddered, knocking everyone off their feet in the slippery darkness. But Ditaolane held strong, striking again and again, piercing the beast's belly so deep the wound opened to the outside world. And on Ditaolane's final strike, he tumbled out of the wound in Kammapa in a torrent of blood and guts, landing on his feet, ready to continue the battle. But Kammapa wasn't moving. Could it be? Yes, he had done it! Kammapa was finally slain. And as the sun rose over the horizon to shine light over the new day, the other survivors stumbled out of the carcass, squinting from the sunlight they hadn't seen in far too long. And as they all stood, now free from Kammapa's belly, Ditaolane fell to the ground and wept with joy, for he knew he now witnessed the rebirth of humanity. This show wouldn't be possible without legendary patrons like Ahmed Ziad Turk, Alicia Bramble, Casey Muscha, Dominic Valenciana, Gunnar Clovis, Kyle Murgatroyd, and O'Reels1.